All right, GM, everyone. Welcome back to the SolanaFloor weekly recap, where we will be breaking down Solana's biggest stories straight from the SolanaFloor newsroom. So I'm Thomas Bahamas, and I am joined, as always, by senior journalist Finn. Finn, GM, how you doing?
GM, Thomas, GM, yeah, very, very good. Markets looking a bit choppy and a bit bleak, but there's still plenty of good things happening behind the scenes. So rest assured, we're still all good.
Yeah. I'm feeling that as well. You know, it's rough out there. There's good news, though. There's a lot going on, and you're looking pretty well rested. And happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Pretty big week, Thomas. We've seen quite a bit going on. It hasn't been so dramatic in the sense that in the past we've had all kinds of carnage on chain, but there was the Solana Accelerate in Hong Kong, which delivered us a good string of announcements. SolFlare cards bringing out some cool things there as well. So yeah, how are you thinking about the week that's just passed?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts, right? You know, as usual, you know, we're obviously here to break down, you know, what's moving in the ecosystem, you know, what's just noise and what's actually worth your attention. But it's hard to focus your attention, right? You know, there's so much going on. There's news here and there. You know, I actually tuned into the spaces that Solana hosted. It was, you know, they kind of got a lot of people together. They were trying to recreate the $8 moment for Solana at $80. I'm hoping they put the bottom in. But yeah, I mean, things are, you know, kind of dicey, right? Metal's kind of pulling back hard. Stocks are flattening out a bit. And crypto is looking pretty fragile right here. But there's, you know, definitely some silver linings, right? The ecosystem welcomed more devs in 2025 than ever before. I think the number is 3,830, much more than the 75 from a few years ago. And some of the downstream effects is that we should really have, you know, more apps than ever before in the future. And the good news is also they're easier to build than they ever were before.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that stood out to me with that big call that went out with all the ecosystem leaders was it was great to see so many head honchos of Solana in one place. But what was your biggest takeaway from that call?
Yeah, let's see. So I guess first of all, like it sounded kind of corporate, right? You know, when I guess like the way that I think about that $8 when Solana was $8, it was the bottom. You know, Vitalik had just tweeted out that there's a lot of good devs and hardworking people in the Solana ecosystem. So it was like a rally cry. And I remember that like very fondly, where like I was hoping for more of like, we're doing this, we're good, we're so back. And we got some of that, but it did feel, you know, a little bit more, you know, like toned down and a lot more serious than what I remember. I don't know if you got a chance to tune in. What were your thoughts?
I didn't tune exactly, but it makes sense to me that it would be a bit more corporate and a bit more, I guess, professional, because, you know, we have come a long way in the almost 4 years now since that fateful $8 SOL moment. There's obviously a lot more institutional interest, so we probably can't be on Twitter, you know, trying to pump up the tires and get everyone back on their feet when we've got so many suits hanging around. But yeah, I think it's a change for the best. Let's dive into this newsletter, shall we? So as you know, the newsletter breaks down the top 6 stories of the week. The first one coming in here, tying onto that TradFi angle, is that Goldman Sachs has disclosed $108 million investment in Solana ETFs as it has slashed Bitcoin and Ethereum exposure. So Goldman Sachs, TradFi titan that needs no introduction, they recently disclosed their full crypto holdings. They've made over the last few months, they made $108 million in Solana, and they've also, the value of their Bitcoin and Ethereum holdings has actually trimmed down. So while that could be argued as it's a rotation, they're kind of leaving these older coins and putting more capital in Solana, I think there's probably more likely due just to price action alone. But at the same time, the AUM and the percentage of Goldman Sachs AUM in crypto is now at 0.33%. So that's definitely rising up, even if they are still holding XRP, which, you know, I'm not sure who's advised them to do that, but that's happened. Thomas, how are you feeling about Goldman Sachs ramping up their crypto accumulation?
I mean, it's incredibly bullish. So, you know, the more we look at these banks, it's like the banks are more bullish than crypto Twitter, right? The timeline's bearish. You're seeing all these like bearish price predictions from them. And then you could pretty much Google any bank. I mean, we don't use Google anymore, but you could look up any bank and their crypto take, and they all have incredibly high targets for all of our coins, where it's like, we don't have that. So I don't know what's going on, but it seems like there is a like noticeable shift where it's like, hey, the banks are bullish, they're buying our bags. You know, the proof is in how much they're actually buying and how much they're holding. You know, when that turns around, I don't know, but it seems like they're kind of ahead of everyone right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think what's curious is that they've actually spread their allocation across a variety of different Solana ETFs. So you know, while one might think it's perhaps easiest to just pile all into Bitwise, into the largest one, or into the ETF with the lowest fee rate, Goldman Sachs has spread that across. So obviously Bitwise has Bitwise and Grayscale have the lion's share of that, but it seems that some has trickled over into the others like Fidelity, VanEck, 21 Shares, and Franklin Templeton. It's good. I think what is magnificent is that people don't realize that as long as SOL price has been going down, we've actually had tremendously solid inflows throughout that time. So I was looking back at the data earlier today, and I was very, very surprised to know that we've actually only had 6 days of outflows since December 4. So in over 2 months, there's really only been 6 days where there's been more selling than buying of Solana ETFs. So again, that just confirms one of the theses that we've spread here quite consistently, is that no matter what happens with the price, institutions are still buying and they're still filling up the tank.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we love to see them buying. I mean, they are long-term holders. One thing that really kind of captured my mind was I think Lily was at one of those recent conventions, and she was talking about Solana being the real only hope for peer-to-peer cash. And I mean, I think she's right, you know, where people actually can use crypto, send it between each other. You know, a lot of it is, you know, meme coins, NFTs, but I think that that's kind of the intro level to what we're going to be seeing more of. I really like that take from her. You know, that's kind of the opposite of ETFs and institutions buying, but I like that narrative a lot. So I don't know if you caught that, but that seemed to be something that really stuck with me.
Yeah, and it really kind of reinforces the stablecoin ethos, in that the stablecoins are becoming the biggest and most applicable utility of crypto so far. And if Solana is going to be the place where all those rails happen, and especially as we've seen with agent-to-agent transactions, I know you've been covering that very, very closely. That could also be the kind of next big unlock for what we're doing on Solana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on, this is one that I know you'll be very, very excited to get stuck into. Solana Perps scene snubbed once again as Trojan Terminal integrates elsewhere. So for those who don't know, Trojan is it was an old TG bot. It evolved into a trading terminal, and they've just gone into a full stack system by integrating Hyperliquid Perps. So 50x leverage on all kinds of crypto. There's even some coverage for commodities and equities through HIP3. This is great for Trojan users. It lets them touch all kinds of more markets with leverage, which, you know, for better or worse is available, and people are going to use that. But I think what stood out here and what people are a bit upset about is that instead of going to a local Solana native Perps DEX, Trojan chose to go out and get their Perps execution service by Hyperliquid, which is honestly a bit of a slap in the face and kind of a shame for the existing Perps exchanges on Solana. I know that we do have some good Perps exchanges on the network, but at the moment we're just being outclassed in terms of volume and open interest. So it's being called a fumble by operators on Solana. Thomas, you've got some thoughts on Perps. Do you want to kind of shed some light on what you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned stablecoins before, right? So stablecoins are probably one of the biggest product market fits in crypto. The next is Perps, right? And we're seeing that by the sheer volume that's going on in Hype. Hype is an absolute beast. You know, I obviously, you know, I've been tracking it more lately, but I wasn't aware of just how much volume is going on there, right? There's like billions of dollars of open interest on, you know, on Bitcoin, ETH, even metals now. So they've really got they've got that ecosystem kind of cornered when it comes to Perps. And, you know, I'm Solana focused. We have fantastic Perps exchanges on Solana right now, but I don't know what it's going to take to get them to that level, right? We are seeing, you know, there were some kind of technical things getting in the way from, you know, execution being as good as it needs to be for really like top tier, you know, really people that are really looking to like really maximize their Perps experience. And when you really want like to onboard the TradFi guys, they're looking at those small details. So every detail matters. And we're starting to see those actually roll out on Solana. So I don't think that it's going to be the, technical limitations anymore, right? I think it was just today that Bullet, Tristan from Bullet, announced that they're fully live with their platform. I know it's been in development for a while, but it's actually a roll-up on Solana where it has its own execution environment where they're able to match and beat, execution times. I think it's like a few milliseconds, for actually performing a transaction. So I think we're catching up on the technical side. Now what they really need to do is bring the community on. Hyperliquid, they airdrop the early users millions of dollars. So that community is probably not going to shift. I think it's going to be a catch-up game, right? I think that we have a lot to do, right? I mean, get the technical side there. We need the community there. We need the onboarding there. I still think that Hyperliquid, from a user perspective, isn't the best user experience, right? It's kind of like sideloaded through Arbitrum. If I could just log in on Solana, log in with my Phantom wallet and go, that's good. I guess that's why Phantom brought in Hyperliquid directly on, through their wallet. But I still think that it's a little bit it's a little jankier than I want it to be, where I think a lot of these Solana based ones can provide the full experience that could be a lot better. But with where we're at right now, it needs some work. I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but that's kind of where I'm thinking.
Yeah, 100%. I personally, I'm very excited about Bullet. I'm very excited about Bulk. I think from an academic standpoint, it looks like an elegant solution to the problems that have been plaguing Solana's layer one perps for a long time. Tristan here, who's the CEO of Bullet, has said that they're actually getting 250 microsecond order execution. I haven't seen any benchmark tests that prove that, but if that is the case, then that is probably the fastest perp DEX that we've seen in crypto, and that will outperform any other rival. Whether that happens under the strain of mainnet with thousands of users remains to be seen. But yeah. I am very excited about it, and it raises an interesting point, because if you or me log into a perps DEX and you place your order and you click buy and you watch a little circle buffer, you don't know the difference between whether that's 200 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds or 2 seconds. You just click it and it works. So on paper, it's easy to say that the difference between 200 milliseconds and 50 milliseconds isn't actually that much of a difference. These guys, like Tristan, like the guys at Bulk as well, have informed me that that's true for me, but for the target market of these large scale perps DEXs, who are algorithmic traders, quantitative traders, and high frequency traders in general, they really need as much speed as they can get, because otherwise quotes get stale, otherwise pricing's lag. You want to be able to cancel your orders faster than your orders can get hit and liquidated. So I think underneath all of that, faster is better. And hopefully with Bulk and Bullet coming out, we actually do get close to having a hyper competitive perp scene on Solana.
I 100%. Sorry to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
No, go on.
So and I kind of think that part of why Solana perps are so far behind is, I want to say it was like oversold in the beginning. It was like, hey, use Drift. It's the everything. It's like the everything's perps exchange, where like the execution wasn't that great in the beginning, where now like the product's fantastic, right? Like that's a good product. I feel like there are other really good perps DEXs that might not be good for high frequency traders, but they're good for the everyday user. I think that there's a pretty big disconnect, because some of like the high frequency traders will go and take a look at it, have one trade execute, not the best, and then they slam the whole platform and people follow them, right? So I think a lot of that happened in the beginning, where of course as things are getting set up and they're testing the limits of everything, you kind of hit those limits and you see those, where I think they've worked through a lot of those issues. And like as a normal user, if you're using any of these perp exchanges on Solana, like they're pretty great. They're pretty good already, and with these new releases, like they're going to be fantastic. So I think that's kind of where we're at. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd echo those thoughts. I think hopefully we're there. I think the difficult thing is actually going to be getting these users to stick, because obviously the perps DEX meta is very, very popular. It's been one of the biggest airdrop farms consistently over the past few years between Lighter and Hyperliquid itself. So I think making sure that your application is sticky and you keep getting users coming back even after the incentives are gone are going to be the defining point that, you know, makes or breaks the life cycle for these upcoming Perps DEXs. But very, very excited to see where that happens next for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. Moving away, continuing with Perps. I don't know if you saw this one, Thomas, but Solana co-founder Anatoly Yakovenko has shared Vibe-coded Percolator memecoin Perps as developers fork the project. So this is a wild one because if you remember back in October, Toly's GitHub went public and it, you know, had some Claude written code about a meme coin backed Perps DEX that he was working on. It was kind of a passion project, and then in true Solana fashion, a bunch of ecosystem developers picked it up. They took it up the mantle, and they've actually started, you know, working with this idea and trying to make something of it on Solana DevNet. It remains to be seen if this is actually going to be kind of an idea that takes full form and becomes an app on mainnet that people choose to use. But I think it's a lot of fun in the sense that Toly has an idea, you know, he puts it out to the public, and then this open source community picks it up and runs with it and tries to see how far they can get with it. Yeah, again, I'm not convinced how robust the model is. People have said that, you know, there are risks, but ultimately the risks only go to the value of the meme coin itself. So, you know, play stupid games, stupid prizes is one argument there. But yeah, I'm curious to see if this goes the distance and if this makes it to mainnet beyond DevNet. Have you looked into this at all, Thomas?
Yeah, well, so I kept seeing Toly retweeting a meme coin, and I was like, why is he doing this? You know, like I thought we were past that stage, but I did look into it a little bit, and it seems like he went on Claude and said, rewrite hype on Solana, make no mistakes. And what he got was Percolator, and I mean it's pretty cool. I mean, I think that we're getting to the point where vibe coding, like he started vibe coding this and looking into ways to doing it. And I think that like that window is open now, right? People can look into this, and if they're not getting the experience they want, they can build it, right? So they went in there, they CTO'd the whole GitHub, they're in there working on it. And I mean, Toly's pushing them on it. So he's like debugging it in real time. He's fudding it, like trying to find like different attack vectors that he can find. And I mean, it would be a very like Solana Perps DEX if it was all meme coins, right? So I like it. I like the direction of it. I have no idea. I haven't used it. I don't even think it's in production yet, but I think we're going to kind of see a lot more like grassroots, you know, CTO style programs come out. And I think it's cool, right? You know, if this actually picks up and it gets going, that would be great. If not, you know, it'll be another time where people will FUD Toly and say that he was, you know, tweeting out a meme coin.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that works quite well that Toly does that I quite like, is that he will kind of put his stamp on approval on anybody building anything, you know, regardless of whether it's a bit silly and a bit whimsical or if it's very, very serious. You know, I think this is one of the reasons why Solana has been so successful, is that, you know, people at the top of the stack have been very, very focused on getting apps out into development as much as possible. So yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. I think the meme coin Perps DEX has been tried many, many times before, and I think it's consistently failed. So, you know, who knows whether this can go the distance, but it's a fun idea, and it's fun to see people play with ideas like this on DevNet in an environment where there's very, very low risk, right?
Yeah, and I mean, meme coins have enough volatility already. Like we don't need more perps on meme coins in general, I would say. However, you know what? Like people are going to want it, you know, and if they're going to want it, somebody's going to build it. And a cool aspect of this too that is probably understated is you're getting to see, you know, how Toly would build it, like what he's thinking about, like what attack vectors there are, what he thinks is important, and he's just doing it all, you know, in public for everyone to see on Twitter. So it's actually pretty cool to follow along.
Yeah, and I think that's a great step as well, because Solana's often been criticized for not really having that open source culture that is pretty, you know, fundamental to ecosystem like Ethereum. Like there's a lot of closed source apps on Solana. There's a lot of you know, people not being willing to open source their code, you know, and let people pry their eyes into it. And that's kind of table stakes on Ethereum. Not many people do it here. So maybe this is something that actually starts that conversation steering back towards open source again.
Yeah, it's kind of like the rise of open source right now is what is what I'm seeing in general. I feel like we've been hearing about this forever. Ethereum super open source. Solana has some open source. I wouldn't say it's like the dominant theme in the Solana ecosystem, but in crypto there is a lot of open source, and now we're kind of seeing that outside of crypto as well with a lot of the new AI, Claudebot, and OpenClaw stuff. So it's interesting to see. It's something that I can't avoid on my timeline, and it's very interesting to see all those topics be like front of mind for everyone.
Yeah, 100%. We've got so much news to crack through, so I'm gonna keep pushing ahead. Next story, and this one actually just got a whole lot more interesting on some recent announcement that Jupiter has just put out. The story as it stands is Jupiter community expresses concern over missing airdrop and Jupe decline. So a few weeks back, Jupiter did their Cat Lumpur conference, and as you would expect from Jupiter, they listed off a huge slew of announcements. There's everything from Jupiter Global. They're working on Gum more. Jupiter Predict is integrating with Polymarket. So Jupiter, as you would expect, is kind of firing on all cylinders from a product side. But on a community side, they can't really catch a break. Jupe still is trending down. People are still upset. People are waiting for their Jupiter airdrop that never arrived. And a lot of people were very, very upset about this. First of all, I think people perhaps over-index on the Jupe price decline. I've got this graph here that basically shows a bunch of other Sol altcoins. We've got Pump there, we've got Ray, and they all move together, right? Like Jupiter's price decline is not a Jupiter exclusive thing. I think they've probably been given a bit of a tough blow there by grace of having such a large community of very, very vocal people. But yeah, in the last probably half hour or so, Jupiter has actually come out and they've announced a governance proposal to maybe address this. I'm just crossing over to their Twitter here. So the important proposal is looking to pause emissions from the team reserve indefinitely, absorb any team sales of vesting tokens in the Jupiter treasury, postponing Jupiter indefinitely, and accelerating offsetting mercurial vesting. So Thomas, the general theme, if we tie it all up into one succinct word, is that Jupiter is targeting net zero emissions. They want to stop the token inflation that people are saying is destroying the coin, and they want to kind of put everyone online again and right the ship essentially and start steering it into happier days for Jupe token holders. How do you? What's your knee-jerk reaction on this governance proposal?
So I think it is a great reaction to the token price. I think that people, are right to question, one of the most successful protocols on Solana that has a coin that has just been going down. But if you do look at it compared to other coins, you're right. That's the trajectory of all the coins. It's been more of a bear market. But another part that a lot of people aren't thinking about is, I am a Jupe holder and staker, but I was given a bunch of the coins, right? Most of my Jupe was airdropped to me. So a lot of people got free coins. And what do they do with free coins? A lot of times they sell them. So I think that that's kind of a natural reaction to getting free coins, right? So a lot of airdrops end up getting sold. We see that over time. They do multiple airdrops per year. And you know what? A lot of people end up selling them. So for them to address that part head on, to have no more emissions, I would imagine that that's probably the largest leak in what's going on with it. And I mean, with the amount that they're shipping too, right? Like I couldn't even keep track of all the announcements that they put together at Cat Lumpur. So they do a lot, and for them to address their token price this way and be honest with what's going on, I think this is a good direction, and I think a lot of people are kind of looking at how they approach this, right? Because a lot of people are in similar situations where, is it just the bear market and that's why the token's down, or was it set up improperly in the beginning and things need to be changed? My guess it's probably a little bit of both. And it seems like Jupiter is the team that is willing to go out there and do whatever they can to fix it, to make it right for their users. So that's how I'm viewing it. I'm not sure how you view that.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pull an opinion together just because this news has only dropped, in the last half hour or so. So
yeah,
we're kind of digesting it live right now. I think it makes a lot of sense that they want to trend to net zero emissions so they can start kind of building up from the ground up.
Yeah.
If you're bullish on Jupe, this is probably the most sensible time to put your flag in the ground and preach that to the gospel. Obviously, NFA, don't go buying JUP because I said that. I think the counter argument here is that there's going to be a lot of airdrop farmers who are going to be really, really vocal about this, because they will have been farming JUP and using all the products all year with this idea that there's going to be the JUPuary airdrop happening, and there's going to be 700 million JUP tokens going out. And now that the proposal is there to maybe postpone that indefinitely, I can see a lot of people having some big problems with that. Ultimately, though, it basically separates the Jupiter holder community into the airdrop farmers and the people who actually just want to double down and see this project succeed. So maybe this is the ripping off of the band-aid that needs to happen for JUP to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it that way, right, it's like, I could see both sides of that argument, right? If you're an airdrop farmer and you're farming this specifically and you don't get tokens for farming it, I mean, you feel like you're rugged. But the other side of that is like, I don't know, if you're bullish long-term on Jupiter, that might be the better investment, is to not have an airdrop where the token just keeps going down to zero. So I think it's a good way to address it. I want to say that they had a team, was it last week or the week before, that bought like $38 million worth of the token at spot price. And I think that was like 18 cents, and it's down a lot from there. So, I mean, there is a lot of people invested in this. And I mean, for the token to just keep having, 700 million tokens going out every January, does it really make sense to keep that going if the token's going down? So, I don't know. We'll see. I could understand why people would be angry, but I could understand, long-term thinkers thinking, all right, this is, the turnaround for it.
Yeah. And the other interesting argument is that we're still not sure if they're going to continue doing JUP buybacks as well, because one of the arguments has been that, yes, they're doing a extremely large amount of buybacks, 70 million. I want to throw a random number out there over the last year. And that hasn't stopped the bleeding of the token, despite, just a huge flow of capital into supporting token price. The argument has been that the reason that hasn't supported token price is because there's just so many emissions hampering that down, and that the buybacks just can't keep pace with the amount of those emissions. So if those emissions go to net zero, all of a sudden you've got, 70, $80 million being plugged into the JUP chart over the course of the year. Without that downward price action from things like JUPuary and team emissions. And I think even the mercurial stakeholders, they're saying they're going to buy them out. So yeah, it comes down to the governance proposal. I don't know how this one's going to go. I think there'll be a lot of discussion over the coming days about whether people want to side with just get the airdrop and dump it and move on, or whether they want to, put JUP on their back and try and send it back up. So yeah, we'll need to be keeping an eye on that one very, very closely.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm rooting for them. I do want it to go well, but I'm also curious to see how it goes, right? I think there's a lot of teams that are looking at this, and they're going to be, kind of the first movers on this. So, if this works, then maybe this is the catalyst for a lot of other teams, finding that bottom and finding a way that works for them, for their token. So, I do hope it goes well.
Yeah, and the reality is that this is also a product of a bad market. If prices were good and crypto was going up, people probably wouldn't be searching for these kinds of solutions.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good luck to you, Jupiter, for that upcoming governance proposal. We'll see how that plays out. Story number 5 in the newsletter today: we have developers on Solana increased almost 10x since 2020 as the network welcomes a record 3,830 new developers in 2025. So. While markets flounder in disarray, the devs are turning up and doing the good work. They keep on shipping. They keep bringing us new apps and new fun tools to play around with on-chain. Syndica's 2025 Solana Developer Report says that we've got 3,830 new developers to the chain just over the course of the last year. This is a record high, so we've never had this many new developers coming in. And while they're not all professional devs working on existing teams, even having amateur devs and hobbyists come in to play around with things means that we can probably expect to see a huge amount of new apps coming in the next year or so. I think that's fantastic. I think that's really, really exciting. The other thing that I found super interesting in the Syndica report here is that the share of active developers by continent has actually shown that the vast majority of, not the vast majority, but the majority of Solana's developer community are actually based in Asia at the moment. So while the US represents around 25% of the developer community for Solana, Asia as a region has actually attracted more Solana developers there. So It's tight. Europe up there as well with 31.8%, but it's a global network, which we love to see. Thomas, you were mentioning earlier that it's easier than ever to build apps with vibe coding and things like that. Do you think that with the influx of new developers and the ease with which new apps can be made, we're going to see hundreds, if not thousands, of new apps being launched out through Solana in the next year or so?
Yeah, I think 100%. Yeah, and first of all, I did want to say how cool how awesome it is that everything is so global and worldwide, right? A lot of things come back to the US and we have to talk about US policy. And it's like, I'm so sick about talking about the US policy. Like, I want to see what people want to build. What are they building in Asia, right? Is it something that we haven't even thought of? I love that there is, so much diversity within the Solana ecosystem. So I love to see that number. And yeah, I mean, what a fun space to be a developer in right now, right? I feel like Solana is like kind of at the forefront of a lot of different angles. And it seems like there's a lot of money going towards developers and they're going after really big markets. And the pace is incredibly fast. So it seems like a fun place for developers to come. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that, but one of my favorite things is when the developers kind of like fight with Toli on Twitter and they like talk about like, why did you build something this way when you were first setting it up, and like the back and forth that's like watching the developers kind of fight with Toli on the timeline is like, it's like one of like the peak entertainment things for me. So I like seeing that.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that Solana's developer community is getting so much bigger is that we've just got so many hackathons now. I feel like every month we've got a new hackathon focusing on some obscure niche and trying to bring developers in and get them kind of jazzed and motivated to be building apps and incentivized, financially as well to make that happen. So there's a new one here from Seeker, the Monolith Solana Mobile Hackathon from Radiance DAO. 6 weeks, 125K in prizes. Like, there's very, very generous incentives on offer. I saw earlier that Solana has actually just launched another one. I think it's called the Graveyard Hackathon, and that's 75K towards teams building in what we might call dead sectors. So that's a lot of fun. Hopefully some NFTs and some crypto gaming can get a bit of love finally. You've been dabbling in the vibe coding a bit, I think, Thomas. Have you played around, tried to build any apps?
Yeah, I haven't personally like built anything. But I love researching it. So I actually used to work in AI. So I love watching all of this come out, and the way that like this is all shaping up is these programs are getting so good, right? The new version of Codex, the new version of Claude, like Claude coding, OpenClaw puts it all together. Like, there is like a whole new world opening up to where basically anybody is going to be able to vibe code these. And Solana is really leaning into it as well, right? So they're putting out developer tools, how-tos. They're making all of the data really accessible. They're putting out, how to actually do this, how to integrate your OpenClaw with this, how to pay for it. Like, I feel like the more that they can lean into that, the better, because this is like, I don't know, this was like the sci-fi part of crypto that everybody has been talking about for a long time. And I always kind of thought that this was never going to happen, right? Even like the thought of AI agents just going out and doing things for you is a relatively new concept. And now it's like taking over, right? Like, you can just send your agent out, have it do something overnight. Like, what I was trying to build is just like a scanner. So go out, scan these X accounts, scan SolanaFloor, scan a few different other news sites. So I get to wake up and get all the Solana news that I can in one place. And it's like, it just built it. I didn't go in, like I had to add a couple API keys. And other than that, it's like, it built it. Where, I'm not a developer at all. So for me to be able to just do that part, I feel like that was like a pretty big leap. And, that's only the first, the entry level stuff that you can really be building. So I think that door is just like wide open right now. And the more that Solana can lean into this, a lot of it is through, like X402 payments, where it's micropayments, right? I used to hear about micropayments like 10 years ago, that crypto was going to be micropayments. And we haven't really seen that, where now it's like, all right, if you want to gate your website where you're putting out really good data and it's like good source data, and you want to charge 6 cents for somebody to access it, like you can do that now. So I think that there's like really good implications of that. And I think that there is like a whole new world that's going to be built. I think that we're going to see apps for everything. Like if you like, I know that you're, pretty big on the Seeker, but if you go in the Solana mobile dApp store, there's like new apps every day. And some of them are agents, some of them are just kind of like fun to do apps, but it looks like people are just kind of like putting things together as like a hobby and building out like really cool applications. So I'm having a lot of fun using the different apps and seeing what people are building. I love it.
I think I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, because I see a lot of people, everyone sees a whole lot of people all across the timeline talking about Claudebot and how their agents are doing everything for them. I feel like I'm seeing a whole lot of shovels and not a lot of gold, right? Like there's a lot of picks, there's a lot of AI agent services for workflows and AI agents working together, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of end products that people can actually use. Do you think that's just a question of time, or do you think we're haven't quite figured out how to put these things into practice yet?
Yeah, I think we're already starting to see them, and I think it is early, right? Like I think Claudebot came out like a couple weeks ago, so I don't think we've seen like the full onslaught of everything coming on, but I mean, I think Opus 4.6 just came out recently, so it's like everything is really escalating quickly in the whole AI market. And in my mind, and obviously, like Solana biased and crypto biased, like I'm actually seeing that crossover more and more, and like the need for crypto, where it's like before, what were you going to do? Put your credit card number into an AI agent? Like that's that number, you see a credit card number, you can use it, right? So it's like the cryptography keys, having a public and a private key is actually very valuable in an agentic future. So it's like, I just see like a whole new like product market fit, like a whole new narrative. And, I think it's really exciting. Like it's one of the, even though the, prices aren't down and showing, but it's like pretty much Coinbase launched X402. Base obviously, had the head start with that. And now we're seeing Solana really like take over on that. Or not take over, but like increase like significantly. And I think it's really exciting. So I think there's a big future there. Is it, are we seeing 1,000 new apps right now that everyone's using? No, but every app that anybody has out there is going to be improved significantly with this. And, people are going to be able to build, the app that they want. The ideas guys, like us ideas guys finally have a chance at this.
Yeah, it's definitely still in its infancy, and probably it's very likely that in the next 2 or 3 weeks some new model comes out that's more powerful than Claudebot, and everything we learned about Claudebot is kind of irrelevant, or at least has to be reappropriated to a new machine.
Yeah, and the way that so the way that I see that is Claudebot is like the L1 or something, right? So it's like the piece that brings together whatever model you want. So whatever the best model is, you can just use it, right? So and it can be very personalized into how you think and to the way that you build. So you're able to use the best tools and even have multiple of those tools talk to each other. So it's really cool.
All right. Big time AI boom. We're going to push ahead to the last story in the newsletter. Hurupay fails to raise a 3 million ICO target on MetaDAO. Is the ICO meta over? So earlier in the weeks past, we were talking about some of these ICO raises that we're seeing going through. They were raising a mouth-watering amount. We had massive commitments, 50, 60 million. I think some of them even got over 100 million based on the oversubscription model. In a matter of months, that's all turned around. The most recent ICO for Hurupay, an emerging neobank, has actually failed to meet its $3 million target. So everyone who contributed to that originally is now being refunded. This is actually, I think, the first time that a MetaDAO-based ICO has moved away from the oversubscription model, and as a result, perhaps of wider market conditions, it would be conjecture to say one or the other was totally responsible. Hurupay has actually failed to reach its minimum cap and has needed to refund everybody. Do you think, Thomas, this is indicative of the market in general and these poor conditions, or do you think that the oversubscription model made it easier for teams to raise, because there was also the dynamics of poly market trading in the background based on commitments, and there was a kind of a few more game theory elements to this. What's your gut feeling?
Yeah, I'd say my gut feeling is a little bit of both, right? I feel like everybody's kind of on the edge of their seat, not sure. It's like we're down at low levels, we're on support, and it's like one little piece of news could send us down, is what it feels like. But they're making changes. I think that MetaDAO is doing a lot of good. I think they had a lot of very successful ICOs. They're making some changes. Did they fall short here? Maybe it was the product that wasn't as interesting. Like, I didn't personally look into this one as much. But I mean, I'm not looking to allocate capital to, many early stage companies like this right now. So maybe other people are in that same mindset. I mean, ICOs really do go off it's kind of like when you have liquidity, that's what you really want to be doing, right? It's like NFTs or meme coins. It's like coins go up, you want to start allocating to some other things, where ICOs early stage would be some of those. So it could just be a little bit of a pullback from there. But, I still like MetaDAO. I still think that they have something going for them. I think they're trying to attack, a big problem in crypto. They've seen some success. They've seen some FUD recently. So I don't know where it goes, but I think that it's generally the right direction for where I want to see things go.
Yeah, I don't think this reflects badly on MetaDAO at all. I think this is a wider market thing. I think the oversubscription model turns it kind of into a trading game, basically, especially with the poly market angle in the background. I don't think this reflects badly on MetaDAO at all. If anything, it raises the bar on what emerging teams have to be offering if they want to get funding, because months back you could kind of do the ICO, you could launch your app through the MetaDAO platform, and you could kind of expect that traders and speculators and oversubscription players are going to make sure that you reach those caps and you get the money you need to run your project. In this circumstance, once that oversubscription model is gone and that kind of game theory element is gone from it, you actually really need to be coming with a ironclad product if you want to reach that minimum. Again, it's difficult market conditions. Nobody wants to be allocating capital into speculative early stage projects at the moment. So I think Hurupay has just been hit with a bit of bad timing here, really.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, they're coming off their last ICO with Ranger Finance. Like, I feel like that was just an interesting one, right? It got oversubscribed, and then the community voted to buy back a bunch of the tokens right away. Like, I just feel like that was extremely messy and overly messy, and it kind of like spoke to like the core of how MetaDAO works, right? So I think that they might need a little bit of time, and it wasn't the product that I wanted to look at, right? So maybe it's a little bit of everything that's going on there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the ICO game on Solana in the past few weeks has been diabolical as well. Like, we've seen the Trove and the space stories where the teams would take I think 11, 12, maybe even 90 million, and then say, yeah, actually, we're going to keep all of it, even though the minimum raise was looking at like 2 million, things like that. So people are not willing to be throwing money into random pots without this kind of guarantee that they'll get it back. And MetaDAO provides that guarantee, but I think there's still some negative sentiment around the whole Trove and space ICOs, which are separate from all that. But it carries over.
Yeah, and ICOs are risky. It's like super early stage business, right? It's very hard to get it right, and people like romanticize it and like have nostalgia for like the big ones that went right, and they'll forget about the 100 that were just absolute scams, right? Where I think that MetaDAO is going to close that gap and have as good of products as they can, and at least try to stop the rugging, right?
Yep, absolutely. So that wraps up the 6 stories for the week. But as always, there is a whole slew of honorable mentions of things happening in the background that don't quite make it into the top 6 stories. So I'm going to run through those now. As we mentioned earlier, the Solana Graveyard Hackathon has begun with 75K worth of rewards to teams building in so-called dead sectors. So if you're interested in gaming, art, NFTs, on-chain social networks, things like that, the things that haven't survived, this is your chance to find some funding to keep building those apps. At Solana Accelerate in Hong Kong, we got a ripper of a collection of new announcements. Alibaba has demoed high-performance Solana RPC service. So Alibaba is probably the biggest e-commerce platform in the world, and the fact that they are expanding into Solana infrastructure is just a signal that the biggest companies in the world want to be here, and they want to be having exposure to Solana however they can. The SolFlare card enables real-world spending of any SPL asset, including meme coins and RWAs. SafePal launches a $3 million builder grant. As we mentioned earlier, the Bullet Perps exchange goes live on mainnet. I believe that's in limited access at the moment, but they're probably going to roll that out to a wider user base very, very shortly. Anatoly Yakovenko joins the CFTC Innovation Advisory Council. Camino's Hastrify Prime market exceeds $500 million in deposits. And Solana's on-chain denominated TVL has reached an new all-time high at 80 million SOL. So this sounds great at face value. I think there's a bit of an asterisk on that because SOL is currently trading at its lowest price since 2023, late 2023. So take this one with a grain of salt, but yeah, SOL denominated TVL is at an all-time high. Thomas, which of these is your favorite? What is the thing that excites you the most of these honorable mentions?
Okay, so I like a lot of them, obviously, but my favorite is the SolFlare card. So any coin that you're able to spend, this is something that I've kind of talked about on here in a couple of videos, but I'm going to spend RWAs, right? I'm going to hold some stocks and I'm going to go use this debit card and I'm not even going to use dollars. I like the idea of doing that, of having, you know, just like a dedicated SolFlare account as a savings account. I mean, it's fantastic. I really like that idea. I love what they're doing. You know, props to SolFlare for doing that.
I think there's a lot of fun ways that you can play this, right? So you could fill it up with RWAs and the earning yield, and you can kind of drip feed your spending and have that be offset by the yield you're generating. On the other hand, you could almost run it as a full like degen spending platform, and you could load it up with meme coins. And because you can set your priorities in that card based on, you know, which coin gets spent first, you can probably set it up so that you're only ever spending your meme coins that are up, right? And that makes a lot of sense because you're constantly off-ramping while prices are up instead of holding these meme coins to zero, which, let's be honest, 99% of them go that way. So maybe this is actually a great way to kind of take profit in a way that feels tangible and real using the SolFlare card. So that could be a lot of fun. Yeah, good idea, SolFlare, for bringing that out. Yeah. Other one I like here, obviously, as we mentioned before, is the Bullet Perps exchange. You know, Solana's behind on Perps. We need to catch up there. We're really dominating on spot trading volume and spot activity. So there's really no reason why we shouldn't close that gap on Perps. Scrolling down, Thomas, I love this thumbnail because you are almost giving Bogdanov vibes with the eyebrow.
Yeah, I absolutely love that thumbnail too. And, you know, that video did kind of take off. But, you know, again, like I'm super interested in this. So for me, putting together a video and like having to research through all of it, like it is insane what is going on. Like part of it, in one instance, like the agents, like first of all, they have their own social media where these agents are talking between each other. But one agent like hired a human to go walk the streets of San Francisco and talk about certain things. Like there is hilarious things going on in the AI world where it kind of reminds me a little bit about crypto, where it's like the absurdity of what's going on is like very in your face. So I love that. And I love that crypto and AI is finally, you know, showing something there. Mm-hmm. I think it was a few months back where we just see, you know, an AI coin launch and, you know, was it anything real? No, you know. So I think that there's finally something there. I think we'll see a lot of cool things come out of it, and looking forward to more of it.
And it ties into that thesis that a lot of the great innovations that we see actually start as entertainment, you know, silly ideas that serve a proof of concept, and then things kind of spiral and balloon from there. Exactly. But our stat of the week actually ties into that. So you've covered this extensively, Thomas, so you're probably better equipped to speak about X402 than I am. What am I seeing here?
You know, that is a little bit small. Let me open that up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So from what I can see, what we have is facilitated by blockchain of X402 payments. Solana commands 69.2% of all 402 transactions.
Yeah.
staggering the how we've just eaten that market share from Base.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot that goes behind this too, right? So first of all, Base had a heads up, right? This is Coinbase that actually built the protocol for X402. But the other side of that is it's all microtransactions. Like the average size that an agent pays another agent is 6 cents. And I think that the gas price, it said in one of the recent ones that Base's average is 1.5 cents. I think it's a little bit lower than that for these transactions. But even at 1 cent, that's a big portion of that entire payment. Where Solana is like 0.0007 cents, right? Like it's a very tiny amount on Solana, and it's consistently low for those transactions where the Base gas fees can go up and down. So overall, it's like the agents are going to pick the layer, the blockchain that is most profitable for them, right? Like it's going to come down to math. It's not going to come down to beliefs or alignment or anything like that. They're like, hey, like we don't care what it is. Like we want to claim all that 6 cents, So with that, we're seeing the them catching up and choosing Solana. So I think that that's big. And another thing too is Solana's really, really leaning into this narrative as well, where they're making it easier. I think there's they just put out like a new wallet release for it. So the easier that Solana makes it, the better. And we're getting a direct like apples to apples comparison here, for what network to use. And it's like the agents don't care about a lot of the traditional arguments for why you would use a blockchain, right?
Yeah, AI agents don't make decisions based on vibes, basically.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cool. So we're going to push on. State of Solana in a tweet. I wanted to include this because the last week or two has been a bit grim in terms of price action. People are rage quitting. People are packing up their toys and setting off for different sectors. I want to instill some positivity, so I went with a tweet from our good old man Kyle Samani. We will see more advancement in on-chain market microstructure on Solana over the next 18 months than any other period in the history of crypto. So we've got Alpenglow, we've got ACE, MCL, prop AMMs, aggregators, conditional liquidity, and general improvements to SVM and scheduler. There's a lot coming to Solana this year. I think at Accelerate in Hong Kong, the ANZA team mentioned that Alpenglow is expected to hit mainnet in early Q3. That'll be huge. That will give us a huge boost to latency and to speed as well. So there's good news coming. I think prices are bad, vibes are down, but there's so much happening at a fundamental level that Solana is going to keep doing what it's doing, and it's going to keep grinding out to become the performance chain as it always has.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's something that we kind of keep going over, right? Is like, there are so many good things coming. There is a lot going on, and the vibes and prices are down. It's historically the best time to buy. We don't give financial advice. That obviously isn't, but buy the dip mentality, I don't see it on Twitter anymore, where that used to be like, hey, Bitcoin's down a little bit, let's buy some. Like that whole, like, we're all going to make it mentality is not there. But I think you can look at the data. I think you can look at what's being worked on right now. And I mean, it's all pretty positive, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I haven't seen many Warren Buffett quotes being shilled around the timeline, so that probably means that we're past that stage, and hopefully we're bottoming.
Yeah.
That's everything we've got from the newsletter, Thomas. Do you want to sign us off? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you again for the newsletter. If you guys are not subscribed to Finn's newsletter, check it out. I mean, SolanaFloor.com. The newsletter is fantastic. I've been reading it for a very long time. It's filled with alpha, filled with data. I think you do a good job of actually like getting to the source on a lot of the data, where not a lot of people are doing that. So thank you, Finn, for that. And yeah, I mean, that's it for the week. Thank you guys for joining in on another fantastic week. I hope you guys have a great Friday, and we're here every Friday. So make sure to tune in next time. Finn, thanks again.
GN, Thomas, thanks again.
Yeah, GN.